Hello everyone, and welcome on board the Sunset Safari with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Brian on camera this afternoon. You've just been taking a look at a beautiful, beautiful bird of prey called the African fish eagle, and we got really excited when we were driving into this area initially to follow up on any sign of the Birmingham coalition of male lion who have made a kill not far from here, when we saw the fish eagle come down and land in this tree. And there's a pond below us that is filled with some massive, massive catfish. Very, very large prey for an African fish eagle, but he certainly will have enough power to latch onto one and at least drag it to the water's edge where he could feed on it. And we are hoping that if we do spend a little bit of time here, we could get lucky. It's one thing that we have not been able to share with you, even though the fish eagles have been having a field day in the drying ponds. It's an extremely hot afternoon, and it's about 30 degrees Celsius, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's the hottest afternoon we've had for quite some time, and are expecting a lot of the animals to be on the go slow for the initial part of the drive. Brent is headed out with Andrew, and their plan is to go and follow up on the quarantine young male leopard who made a duiker kill last night, hoisted it up into a jackalberry tree where I was lucky enough to see him feeding this morning, and all of those of you who tuned into the Sunrise Safari would have also got to see that great sighting. And as I mentioned earlier, the Birmingham coalition of 5 male lions successfully brought down a Cape buffalo not far from where we are. And when we came out on a drive between the safaris to show Nikki and Tara and Kirsty and Eugene the lions, they were at the waterhole here. So I'm guessing it's not going to be long before we find them again. They probably wouldn't have moved too far unless, of course, the vultures found their kill. And if the vultures did find their kill, they would have had to run back there to try and chase them off it. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is that this is a live safari, and if you are joining for the first time and don't believe me that it is happening this very second, why don't you send through a question or a comment, and it's very easy to do so. You can hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv, and we will get back to you straight away. Not always, but we try and answer as many questions as we can, so keep trying if you need to. Okay, and we're going to have one last glimpse of this fish eagle before we rush you across onto Brent's vehicle. He's got himself into a favorable position, and there might be some action, so enjoy.
Hello and welcome on the Sunset Safari, everyone. My name is Brent Leo Smith. I have Andrew Francis, aka the Art Fark, on camera with me today, and we are with Quarantine, who was sleeping happily in the shade. He's now just ascended the tree, so we're going to move so we can get a better look. And we are in quite a deep drainage line, so sometimes we do have a little bit of signal breakup when we move the vehicle. So bear with us while that happens, and hopefully we'll have a really nice view of him plucking the hair from that duiker he killed last night on last night's Sunset Safari. Unfortunately, the way he is sitting at the moment is going to make it quite difficult for us to see. What's behind us, Andrew? We're good? Going on, Andrew?
Yes, sir.
Here we go. And for those of you who might be new, we are sitting live here with a male leopard who is busy taking the fur off that diker before he decides to start feeding on it. And you'll notice that quite often with leopards, before they feed on very hairy or furry things or even feathery things, they will pluck, and obviously quite a lot of that hair does get ingested while they're feeding. And one of the telltale signs of a leopard scat is the fact that there's hair in it from generally multiple animals. So guys, I'm just going to be on the game drive radio for a second. The station's quarantine is in position up in the tree feeding on the munti. So it is really great to have this young male leopard back on the reserve. He has been spending time much further to the south of us. I did hear a rumor that he was chased by another male leopard in that area. And Scott and I, in our discussion before the beginning of the safari, we thought that more than likely he was going to be fast asleep, but fortunately he was when we arrived, and he has decided to grace us with a bit of action and feeding as we arrived and as we decided to come across from Scott. So we've seen him a couple of times this week. We saw him on the boundary, on our southern boundary, where he killed that kudu that was actually stolen by the Birmingham boys, which aren't too far from where we're sitting right now either. So, I'll get Andrew to show you where we're sitting at the moment. We're right in the middle of the Mulwati drainage line. And in South Africa, we've got a wonderful colloquialism for them. It's called a donga. So we're sitting in the middle of the Mulwati donga, or drainage line. And as you can see, there's a sand little riverbed at the base, and quite steep banks, and these wonderful large jackalberry, like the one that Quarantine has got his kill in. And Donna from Missouri is wondering, are the drainage lines for rain overflow? Donna, they are natural. So generally where you find drainage lines like the one we're sitting in is on the boundary of two different soil types. So when it rains and the water flows, the path of least resistance is along these boundaries between the soil types. And that's how they form. And obviously this could be a very young river in the forms. It could be a mighty river one day. I doubt it, depending where we are. So this would be a tributary of the Sand River, possibly, and will eventually make its way down to one of the major rivers in the area, and eventually ending up in the Sabi River, which is probably the biggest river close to us here. And so the water will cut a hole basically and follow a line between the two soil types, and that's where we have these drainage lines. And the reason there's so much sand in that, obviously it's silt that's built up and washed off from other places. Just hear him crunching through some bones there. So we can hear a fish eagle calling above us, and I know Scott is sitting patiently at the Djuma waterhole waiting for a fish eagle to possibly pounce on a catfish. So he is standing by. So if you suddenly disappear from me to Scott, it's because he is playing the patience game with that fish eagle at the moment while we sit here with young Quarantine. So just looking where that kill is and how high it is from the ground, it's probably not the best spot. And if another predator were to come in, either hyenas or lions, he would definitely probably have to move it higher up in that tree, and he's more than capable of doing that. But at the moment it is definitely within reach of lion and hyena. I've seen hyena make some spectacular jumps to steal leopard kills, or attempt to steal leopard kills before. So as Andrew pans up, he would probably have to move it up to that higher fork. There we go, coming into shot now. So obviously as we head deeper and deeper into the dry season, and those of you who watch regularly and keep an eye on the dam cams will notice that the main body of water in the Djuma dam is nearly dry, and there are some catfish in there. And Judith was wondering, would lion and leopard possibly try to catch some of those catfish as it gets drier? Judith, most definitely. I have personally seen leopard catch catfish out of drying pans before. I've never seen lions do it, but that's not to say they wouldn't. All predators are opportunists, and catfish is probably a nice, tasty, easy snack that represents, if the mud's not too thick, very little effort for quite a lot of reward. You can see he's busy repositioning a little bit to try get in. It looks like he's feeding off the rump there. Doesn't look like the best and most comfortable branch for Mr. Quarantine. So as we watch this leopard crunch through what's left of this duiker carcass, and I'm sure at some stage we're also going to see the Birmingham boys take big chunks out of that buffalo. Sharon from Pittsburgh was wondering who's got the strongest bite or jaw power out of lion, leopard, hyena, wild dog, cheetah, or was there something else? So out of the mammals, we're going to go back to the leopard quickly. He's just stood up. He might move the carcass a bit. So we're going to keep chatting there, Sharon. So I just would rather have a look at what Mr. Q's up to. Sorry guys, Sharon, I'm going to be with your question in a second. There is a vehicle trying to get into this sighting, so just let me chat to them quickly on the Game Drive radio. Station approaching, Quarantine coming. Copy, let's just checking if you knew where it was, but I see you do. You can hear a squirrel who spotted him from quite far away, probably 50, 60 meters. An alarm calling at him now. And he's perched up to come have a look. Isn't that wonderful? You can just see his head popping out behind that main stem of the jackalberry. But Sharon, back to your question now. And out of the animals we get here, out of the mammals, a hyena's definitely got the strongest bite pressure, followed by a lion, then leopard, then I'd probably say wild dog, and lastly cheetah. But another animal we do see around here that does have a very, very strong bite force is the crocodile. And a crocodile would probably fit in between a hyena and a lion. But as far as I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, the strongest jaws belong to a North American reptile called the alligator snapping turtle. And that's supposed to have the strongest bite force of all animals. You can see him staring towards that squirrel, but we're going to have a quick look at the carcass. And we can see there he's eaten not even 50% of it yet. He's eaten the good parts, the heart, the lung, liver, and now he's started working his way from the rump. But it just doesn't seem to be the most comfortable spot for him to feed. Interesting to see if he moves the carcass a little bit later, specifically as his belly gets more full and it becomes more uncomfortable for him to lie on that very knobbly branch. So if you guys are wondering what that click is, it's just my camera. And I encourage you guys to take screenshots as well. And don't forget to post them on Twitter and on Facebook. And just use the hashtag Safari Live. He's definitely interested in there. There is a possibility that the squirrel might have spotted something else, that it's alarm calling that could have got his interest, or it could have spotted him, or he might have heard something like a hyena approaching that we might not have. Squirrel's gone quiet, and it looks like he's going to turn back towards the carcass now. Yeah. There we can see he still hasn't got to the front half of the dike yet. He's eaten the majority of the rump, so probably just over half of the carcass remaining. So for a lot of people it might sound like quite a strange thing to do, but Karen from London and Doug are still wondering whether we're collecting leopard scat for the Panthera project, and we are. I still have Viles with me. I don't think we've collected quarantine yet, so once he has moved on and we've noticed where he is defecated, we will definitely go collect that scat. For those of you who are not sure about why we are collecting the scat, Panthera are doing a paternity tests on the leopards in the Sabi Sands, because there's always a lot of speculation about who a leopard's father is. The females will mate with multiple males during their estrus cycles, so you can never say for 100% unless that this was Mvula's son. It could have easily been Tingana's or whatnot, because Karula did mate with multiple males. So by taking the scat's got to be relatively fresh. They'll be able to test the scat from Mvula against the DNA samples from that, against the DNA samples from quarantine, Konuma, and be able to decide and find out who the father is really. So a very interesting project. Panthera have multiple projects ongoing on this in the Sabi Sands at the moment. That is just one of them. So we saw him staring intently to the south down the drainage line, and Raisa has commented maybe it's because he knows that the Birmingham male lion's around, and maybe he can smell them, or maybe there's a hyena. Well, Raisa, the Birmingham male lions are in the opposite direction to where he was looking, and I'm pretty sure he is aware. He probably would have heard the commotion that comes with lions killing buffalo last night. But I'm not sure. I think he was just double checking. I think the squirrel saw him, and he was just making sure there wasn't a potential carcass thief on its way. So for the last while, it seems we've only really been seeing young male leopards, and Dennis from Lakeville, Michigan is commenting, are there any big males around? We keep seeing young males on the safaris. There are definitely, Dennis. Tingana has been around and was mating with Shadow. The reason that there's generally a higher percentage of young males, and specifically sort of between the ages of 1 and about 3, is that they haven't really dispersed yet, and they haven't made their way towards moving out of these areas before they've got to get their own home ranges. I think the reason Quarantine has moved back is I heard he was chased quite heavily by a big male to the further south, and also Tingana seems to have cut off quite a large swathe of Mvula's territory, and also that unknown leopard in the north that some of the people in Buffalo's Hook call Gajima has also now been seen coming onto Juma, and we haven't seen Mvula for, I don't know when the last time I saw Mvula. I think the last time I saw Mvula must be over a month and a half ago. So he seems to be far more to the east now, but you must remember that male leopard territories are constantly changing, and if you look at some of the scientific data, a male leopard will actually sort of have two big territorial switches. Obviously the one in the beginning when he takes over a territory, and then again one towards the end. And the theory behind this is that male leopards tend to stay in charge or have breeding rights for quite a long time, longer than say male lions. So the reason that this happens is that they will swing away, so it stops them from mating with their daughters. So very, very interesting stuff. So to try keep the genetics good, a male leopard, after sort of it's about 4 or 5 years in an area, will actually swing his territory out a bit more again. This time with, I think this was with Mvula was a forced move. I don't think he wanted to move, but I think the pressure from Tingana, and possibly, we don't know how much pressure that unknown male from the north, the one Andrew and I saw very briefly at Buffalo's Hook Dam a while ago, could be doing, and that could be why he has moved further east. So, and with these leopard sightings, they definitely go in waves or with leopard births. So there is a possibility, depending on whether Karula has cubs next, or even Shadow has the second set of cubs again, whether it's going to be maybe a female will survive from the litter and not males. So as we see that duiker carcass dangling there, Wingnut is wondering whether hyenas would be able to jump and grab. Most definitely Wingnut. They would be very, very able to jump and grab that duiker. And lions would be as well. So hopefully for the young quarantine's sake, he spots them before or hears them before and moves that carcass further north. Well, a very big thank you to Insomniac Josh from Connecticut, who's wishing me a very happy early birthday. I'm not going to be here on my birthday, so thank you very much for that, Josh. And Josh has actually got a question about the leopard carcass as well, and he is wondering how long it would take quarantine to eat this duiker if he wasn't disturbed by other predators. Josh, it all depends. We had a look at him as he walked towards that tree. He wasn't that full, but he wasn't that hungry. If he was very hungry, he could probably finish this in less than a day. But I think he's had it here since last night. I think by tomorrow, sunset safari, it should be finished. Maybe even by sometime midday tomorrow. You can see if we have a look towards the back side of him, he's not very comfortable. But don't worry guys, we're going to stay here with quarantine while he continues to feed. Hopefully he'll move into a bit of a better position where we can see a bit more. There we go, we can see him on the hip bone there. Can you guys hear those bones crunching? So guys, while we stay here with quarantine, hopefully he moves that carcass shortly. We're going to cross across to Scotty, who's got a slightly bigger feelid to show you.
Welcome back everyone, and we've managed to find at least 2 of the Birmingham males. There are 3 more somewhere around, probably also lazing about in the shade. We've actually just been to the buffalo carcass and there isn't sign of one of them even close to it. So they are confident that nobody's going to try and steal their kill. Although having said that, I've just seen a bird dropping down into that area and it could well be a vulture. So we'll go and have a closer look afterwards. I'm quite surprised that there already are no vultures there. It's been a very nice hot day, and on the hot days the birds of prey like to ride the thermals. It makes it easier for them to travel, and it also allows them to travel for much longer depending on the heat during the day. Well, one of the lions has left. I'm not sure which way did he go. Okay, and there's another one that you can see just lying down over here. But what I'm going to suggest from the get-go is that we leave these lions while they are regaining energy for their next bout of feeding, and we will come back a little bit later when it's cooler. What I would like to do is go and follow up in an area where Brent was tracking Shadow and her cubs. So they did reunite last night. Nobody saw it, but Brent did see both of their tracks walking side by side. Sadly, the tracks crossed into a property called Sibambili, where we are not restricted to go. But who knows, maybe she came back into Djuma this afternoon, or who knows, maybe she left Sindile somewhere on Djuma. So that's the plan, and like I say, I am certainly going to come back here a little bit later, because we can expect to see some great action of them feeding on the remains of their buffalo kill, as well as I'm hoping we may get to hear them roar. And I know some of you got the end of one of their roars this morning and managed to see a whole sequence of them roaring just once with James, and it's one of my favorite things to share with guests on safari. And it's been a long time since I've been close to any big male roaring, let alone 5 of them. So it's something that I'm looking forward to seriously. And today was the first time that I've seen these lions since they started moving further north away from us at around February or March this year. So it's been a long time since I have spent time with them, and we did spend a lot of time with them over November, December and January, but then they moved quite far north, probably about 30 kilometers to 40 kilometers, about 20 to 30 miles away from us. And thankfully we were friends with some guides working up in that area, so they kept us updated on their movements. But interestingly enough, there was another coalition of 9 males up in that area, so even the strength of the Birmingham boys wasn't quite enough to try and stake out that area, and they made the right decision. 5 against 9 isn't going to be an equal contest. So I'm just going to pop in now very quickly to the kill, just to show you what's happening here and how much remains for those of you who weren't on the sunrise safari. And we speculate and hope that it was a very old bull that we actually saw at the waterhole where we've just come from with the fish eagle, and he could hardly walk about 2 days ago. And Charlie was interested to know whether we think it was that same bull. Judging by his horns, I remember looking at his horns, they're not the biggest sets, and he doesn't look extremely old. And something that James pointed out is that it doesn't appear that he has too much muscle mass, and that was the same as the old and weakening bull that we saw the other day. So I think he's been put out of his misery and become a vital part of the nutrient cycle, a cycle that every animal on earth is a part of, and everyone's time is coming. And thankfully we guessed that it was that old bull. If not, maybe tonight they'll get him, and it won't be the first time that they have caught many buffalo in a short period of time. Last year in November or December they managed to kill 3 buffalo, 2 of which were fully grown, one was a sub-adult, in 48 hours. They were actually currently feeding on one. Oh, Brian, sorry. I'm going to put Brian in the deep end here and get him to try and show you that bird that we actually saw flying here a bit earlier. Remember when we were with the lion initially, I said that there was a bird flying into this area, and it's a hooded vulture. And one of the smallest vultures in this area, but often one of the first down to the kills. And I was surprised to not see any vultures feeding on this buffalo. It's an easy meal for now because it doesn't appear like there are any lions around. So usually what would happen is the lions would see all of them flying down once the message spreads and then come racing in and chase the vultures away. But I don't think they've needed to do that yet, although in this thick bush there could be one of the males nearby protecting the kill. So there's still lots of meat on this carcass. I'm guessing they're still going to be here feeding on it tomorrow morning. But you're not going to have to wait until then to have another look, because we will certainly be back here later. We just need to try and use our time as effectively as possible. And I think this afternoon the prospects of potentially bumping into Shadow and her cub is something a lot of you would be interested in doing. Brian and I sat with that fish eagle until we heard another one calling way above us, and you could actually hear that same one from Brent's vehicle. It was directly above us, high in the sky, and it slowly floated down and actually chased the initial fish eagle that we were watching away. So that's why we moved off. We didn't give up, and we're desperate to try and capture a fish eagle kill, but that's what happened over there. And speaking of the fish eagle, we've got a question through from Jen, all the way in Idaho. And she would like to know, how big is the African fish eagle compared to the American bald eagle? They're very similar looking raptors, and our fish eagle isn't quite as large, Jen, as the bald eagle. She said it's from 7 to 14 pounds, whereas an African fish eagle would probably be at around 8 to 10 pounds, and not quite as big as the bald eagle. Similar looking though. I think the bald eagle's got a pale eye though, and the African fish eagle's got a dark brown eye. And I'm sure if we do spend enough time sitting there, we will eventually get lucky. And that's one thing we do need to remember when on safari, and we can't stress it enough, is patience is often your best friend. Thankfully for you guys though, you can often jump onto the other vehicle while we are waiting during anything that could be somewhat boring, and we just call you in when the action unfolds. Not all the time, sometimes you sit through the less exciting moments with us too, but it is all a part of the safari experience. Hello James in Kansas City, and the discussion of birds has no doubt increased your interest on what's going on here. James is one of our birding enthusiasts, and he would like to know if I have personally seen any warburgs eagles yet, which migrate down from North Africa for our summer. And wouldn't that be wonderful, being a migratory bird living a winterless life? Just following the good weather, no passports required, just your 2 wings and you go wherever you like. James, no, sadly I haven't seen any Warburg's eagles yet, unless I have seen them and incorrectly identified them as something else. But I know James did see one a week or so ago. So they are around and starting to come back. And interestingly enough, I'm told that occasionally it's not uncommon for a couple of Warburgs to stay back in this area, even though the majority of them will migrate north for our winter. I was reading up on some facts on migration the other day, and it really is remarkable how far these birds can fly. Some of them big and well equipped for flying long distances, and some a lot smaller but still kind of equally well equipped for good flying. And some of these birds can fly 240 kilometers every single day. But interestingly enough, it's not the biggest of the birds that fly the furthest. It is one of the smallest. The swallows and the swifts can apparently travel up to 370 kilometers in just one day. So we're on our northern boundary now, and we're going to continue west towards the setting sun and then head south on our boundary between Juma and Sibambili, in the hope that we may find some sign of Shadow and her cub Sindile, who I'm sure a lot of you are relieved to finally reunited last night. As are all of us. It was 8 days that he spent alone, which is a long time for a one-year-old cub, although I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about. But aren't we so lucky to be able to follow the animals closely enough to know these interesting things that happen in their lives? We are going into a little bit of a dodgy signal area, so if the signal does stammer and shake, don't go anywhere. Use that time to stretch your legs, do a rain dance. We're desperate for rain or anything that you desire, and I'm sure the signal will pop up shortly. Well, before we do hit the dodgy signal area, ready and waiting to receive you, and we will call you later for that day.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we're still with quarantine male leopard. We have managed to reposition ourselves to get into a much better spot where we can see him. And he is still chewing on the back end of that diker. Oh, look at those eyes. Looks like he's going to come down the tree to pick up a little piece of meat he dropped. Waste not, want not. He dropped a little piece of the hip bone. We'll see if he actually picks it up.
See the male leopard on the bottom of the tree there? Give me a sec, I'll get him.
Well, looks like he's finished eating for a while. You might go find somewhere nice and cool to sleep.
That was quite a little adventure.
I'm just trying to see where he's going before we move the vehicle. Oh, looks like he's laid down now, so we're going to move around. And while we're moving, we've got a question from Tyler, who's 12 years old and from Ohio. Welcome on the Sunset Safari, and hasn't it been so exciting so far, Tyler? Tyler would like to know how often kills like that duiker fall out of the tree. Well, if you're a leopard, hopefully not too often, but they do from time to time, Tyler. Especially when leopards are younger and more inexperienced, they do occasionally drop out of the tree. But probably once they get a bit older, it doesn't happen that often. And I just have to concentrate for a second here, Tyler. We did some serious maneuvering to get ourselves eye level with Mr. Quarantine. Are we looking, Andrew?
Looking good.
Change the angle a little bit. How's that hole there? Gonna miss it? Well, I thinking is not a good thing, Andrew. I'd like to know whether we're going to miss the hole or not. We straighten up a little bit. Okay. So we're sitting at quite a little angle here at the moment, just to get out of here. Here we go. So that's why Andrew doesn't drive the car, because he's not sure whether we're going to fall in a hole or not. So there you can see where we went through. We pop my head down. There's quite a little steep little drainage line there that we possibly would have got stuck in if we had slid in there. Unfortunately, we didn't. A 25-point turn. We've been spending so much time with a Sindile, another young male leopard recently. Marcia's from Oklahoma. Well, Marcia, sorry, I'm in the bushes here. But Marcia's wondering if Quarantine were to come across Sindile, would he hurt him? And fortunately, Marcia, I'm about to be hit again for your benefit. He would see this as potential competition in the future. Watch the aerial there. Okay. So guys, we might have a little bit of signal breakup because we're ducking back down into the drainage line again. And we appear out into the open. None the worse, apart from a few little slaps in the face by a gory bush. And we are next to young Quarantine again in the drainage line. Giving himself a nice little preen after eating on that duiker. he will definitely feed again. There's a strong possibility he also might head for a drink once it's a bit cooler towards the Juma Dam cam. So guys, later on tonight, keep an eye out on that camera. Or maybe not, because he might find some smelly lions at that side.
Do I need any help today?
So, discussing whether quarantine would harm that young male leopard cub, Sindile. We've just finished discussing that. Laura is wondering, is he close enough to have heard or the commotion of the lions and also maybe possibly quarantine catching that duiker last night? No, I think I had his tracks crossing into Sibambili this morning, so he's quite a long way away from here. I possibly could have heard the lions. Lions hunting buffalo do make a lot of noise, but I doubt he is anywhere near here at the moment. So we've been talking about leopard paternities earlier, and I said it's near impossible to ID the father of a leopard without genetic testing, and Panthera do have that ongoing program at the moment where they are taking fecal samples and testing the genetics to get the paternity of the male and female leopards in this area. Jennifer from Toronto said, is quarantine now in Tingana or the Anderson males territory? Isn't this a dangerous place for him to be due to the fact that it is no longer his father, Mvula's? I'm still not 100% convinced Mvula is their father. As I said, it's impossible to tell until we get the genetics back, and that's going to be in a while. But at this age, he will be in other male leopards territories generally. He's a nomadic male, and he's trying to establish himself, but he's still far too small and far too young to start challenging a dominant male for territory. So he lives a life on the edge, sneaking around and avoiding other big male leopards at the moment.
If she is, he will track her down and find her. Leopards might also come together. One might hear another one killing a dagger, for example.
So obviously, we've spent a lot of time with this leopard and his litter mate, Kunuma, and I'm sure there's a lot of you wondering what would happen if they had to meet up now. Would they end up challenging each other? And I think possibly not yet. They still are at that young nomadic stage, but in the future it is a strong possibility. I'm not sure where Kunuma is or where the last place he was seen.
On Koro this morning.
There we go. Craig's just let me know that he was seen to the east of us this morning. So he is still around, and as they get older they will definitely come into competition for territory if they disperse in the same area. So there is a chance they might have to fight each other, but not yet. There's still a few years to go before that happens. I hope you guys are getting some great screenshots of this guy. So So just to clarify for you, Jennifer from Idaho, this is probably Tingana's territory now. We're still far too east for the Anderson male. And so Josh is wondering, didn't we on the LiveSafari see Mvula staring down the Anderson male a few weeks ago? I think it was, you will find it was Tingana and the Anderson male who were staring each other down, and that was with Scott on Arethusa. We are still right in the center, actually more towards the north of Djuma, and I've not even heard of the Anderson male coming onto Djuma or even near the boundary of Djuma yet. So this would be Tingana territory at the moment. You can see his belly starting to fill up quite nicely. He has been eating quite well. He did have that kudu kill just to the south of us very recently, and he did seem to get through quite a lot of that before the Birmingham boys stole it. He's trying to bite flies. You can see he's panting very heavily, and obviously digestion causes heat, and that's why he's chosen to come lie in the base of this drainage line on nice cool sand. He's not completely full yet, but he is getting there. So these young boys have pulled off some quite impressive feats catching adult kudu, adult female kudu. So Val from Ontario is wondering, what is the largest animal I've known or I've seen a leopard catch and kill? Well, I'd say an adult female kudu. I have heard of one catching an adult male kudu, but possibly from a pure weight point of view, the biggest animal I've seen a big male leopard grab was a sub-adult buffalo, probably weighing more than the leopard itself, well more than the leopard itself, so more than a female kudu. And that was quite a famous leopard in the Sabi Sands, who I believe is still alive, and is currently the oldest known wild male leopard in the world, and he was known as the Campan male. He's unfortunately, from what I last heard, not looking very well. He is full of scars, and I think he might even be blind in one one eye. He is looking very tatty compared to the days when I used to see him, and that was 2007, 6, 7, somewhere around there. So, guys, I hear you're getting some wonderful screenshots. So, we did the black and white challenge the other day, so let's have a color challenge today. So, you guys post all your screenshots onto Twitter, use the hashtag Safari Live, or you can pop them on the WildEarth fan page, and I'll pop mine up as well, so we can see who's got the best shot. So, we did black and white last time, so we'll do color this time, and let's see who can get the best shot. I'll pop mine up in the morning, but you guys obviously out there now, get them out as fast as possible. And Marcia from Oklahoma was wondering what would happen if Quarantine and Kunyuma would bumped into their mother, Karula, at this age. She would probably be quite annoyed to see them. They're supposed to be gone now, as a mother who's sent their son out of home would probably find. If she had a kill, they would steal it from her. That's probably some of the interaction. There might be quite a lot of hissing and snarling and growling, but I don't think it'd be too aggressive. But I don't think she'd be too impressed to find either of them. But if she did have a kill, they would definitely steal it from her. They are much bigger than her now. See, even though he's resting, and watch his ears, they're constantly moving. He is alert to every little sound around him. And I think the fly is also giving him a bit of a hard time. Oh, he's up. I think that patch of grass might have got a bit hot.
Not always.
Sorry, not grass, patch of soil. So the reason he got up and moved there, and he's now lying directly between Craig and myself, is because where he was lying, the soil would have got a bit warm. So he's just basically moved off to another cooler piece of soil at the moment, and to help with that digestion, obviously that heat being caused by his body working to break up that protein. So he definitely looks like he's grown since the last time I've spent some time with him properly. The last time I spent a lot of time with him is when we saw him chase those two male cheetah around Buffalo's Hook waterhole. And you can see his neck's a little bit thicker. He is filling out and is possibly a little bit taller, but obviously not quite filling out to that sort of big male leopard status yet. He's got a few years of filling out to do and some more scars to get, I'm sure. There we can see that wonderful landing strip. Andrew's about to come onto it. Along his back there, from his tail, there we go. One of those wonderful diagnostic patterns. And he's got those landing strip of rosettes that goes up from the base of his tail. So when we saw him at the Buffelshoek Waterhole, after he saw of those cheetah, we did notice a scar. I think it was on his right hand hip. As you can see, it's barely noticeable now, and the fur has grown over it. And these animals have an incredible capacity to heal, and often wounds that we think would be completely fatal, they'll come back from very quickly. See now, even though he's lying on the side, watch his ears, how they move. And those flies scratching his nose. And we see those wonderful long vibrissae whiskers. There we go. See, I can erect all of them at a time. And with them being so sensitive, I imagine those flies must be plaguing him. I think he's going to snooze in this nice cool riverbed for the next while. Definitely hope he will ascend to the tree again and start feeding off that duiker carcass. So, a couple of, Gene from North Carolina is reminding us of a sighting we had a few months ago where we saw both Quarantine and Mvula in the sighting, and I was actually hosting and presenting that safari, so I remember it very well. And when Mvula walked up, young Quarantine went ow, 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 and made those funny contact calls on him. He pretty much ignored Quarantine completely and just carried on walking past. And Gene's wondering, well, surely if he wasn't his son, Mvula would have been aggressive or tried to kill Quarantine. Even if he's not his son, Mvula thinks he is his son. So he has mated with Karula, and Karula probably mated with Tingana, and she also probably definitely mated with one of the males from the north. So there's probably 3 or 4 possible fathers to Quarantine and Kunyuma. And as I say, he might be the father, but he might not be the father. He's got a 1 in 4 shot. So without genetics, we're never going to be able to be certain, and that's what's so amazing about this Panthera project at the moment. We will be able to have a much better idea about paternity in leopards, and it's not something that has been studied deeply at all before.
Okay, last couple of snaps.
So guys, we're going to send you across to Scotty, who's got a wonderful surprise which I'm not going to give away to you just yet. So enjoy with Scott. We'll be sitting right here with Quarantine, and we'll be back with you a little later in the show.
Well, look who it is. It's young Sindile, and isn't it wonderful to see him again? He's moved off a very large distance from where we viewed him for about 7 consecutive days. And the reason why he did move so far is that him and his mother did reunite last night according to the tracks left in the sand. And now I'm guessing she's gone off hunting in this area and left him alone as usual. I've got no idea which direction she could have headed in, and I have been looking for her tracks while I was coming into this general area, but no clear sign just yet. And what an afternoon it's turning out to be, from a leopard who's approaching 3 years of age to one who's around 1. And I hear you guys have been chatting about past sightings and memorable moments that we have got to share with you and with the leopard of the Djuma and Arathusa area. And this young male is certainly going to continue leaving us with some great memories. Now, we are on the boundary of Arathusa and Sibambili. It's all a little bit complicated. Basically, Djuma has got 2 western neighbors, one being Arathusa, which makes up the majority of our western boundary, and the other being Sibambili, which makes a very small section of our western boundary and to the north of Djuma. So he's on the boundary of Arathusa and Sibambili, and sadly now he is heading deeper into Sibambili where we cannot follow him. So this may be the last few glimpses we get of him, but aren't we lucky that the gamble to leave the lion while they're sleeping to try and find you something else interesting has paid off. And the only thing that is missing from this scene is his mother Shadow. But she was here this morning, and at least she has not completely abandoned him. Even if she had have, I think he is at a stage where he can still continue to fend for himself. Now, even though I did just say I think he could fend for himself if his mother did abandon him, it's a great opportunity to answer Kari's question. He's just 16 years old, and she would like to know if and when she has other cubs, will she no longer care for young Sindile? And not necessarily, Kari. There's a strong chance that she will actually continue to fend for him, possibly through default. And what I'm guessing is going to happen is that in 3 months' time, if Shadow does give birth, which she should if her most recent mating was successful, then what we could see is that Sindile will almost become like the older brother or the babysitter who will lurk around and stay with the 2 younger cubs, his siblings, and while his mother goes off to hunt, he'll keep an eye on them, play with them, but most importantly, the reason why he's doing this is to stay under his mother's care and allow her to keep feeding him. And I've seen that happen with leopard before, and in a scenario like that, if any leopard did come across Sindile or the other cubs, Shadow could very well try and defend all 3 of her siblings from them. And it can often turn out that a male leopard trying to kill the offspring of any given female could even kill a female that is trying to defend her cubs. A very, very hardcore sighting like that happened at a lodge where I used to work in the southern Sabi Sands, where a male came up a tree where a young male cub was seeking refuge, and it started to attack this young male, and the female leopard ran straight up the tree to try and apprehend this unknown male, and they both fell to the ground, and he took one bite of her and she was dead. So these things do happen out here, and mothers do defend their cubs very, very aggressively. So I don't think she's necessarily going to forget about Sindile, but what we do have to remember is that there's only so much one mother can do, and she can't split her attention and care among too many cubs, and that's why she will try her best to get rid of Sindile in order to focus on being a good mother for the new cubs. Well, I think that's that for us now, sadly. So we're going to keep on driving off, and like I said, we can't go any further in the direction we've come, so we will keep on driving around and hopefully find some sign of Shadow, the mother, who could be hunting around here somewhere. There's some guests that want to say hello to me on that vehicle, and they're all begging us to stop, which is putting me in a tricky situation here, because I would love to say hello to them, and maybe if Brent's not too busy, he can invite you back onto his vehicle so I can just go and say hello to those guests. I'm not sure who they are exactly, and they could be some viewers, and if they are and they're all the way out here, it would be terrible just to drive away from them. But what we can do is take a quick break here and have a look down to our left. For some of you, this may be some new information. What is this very, very white material that you can see here? And it can be from one thing and one thing only, and that is a hyena, which has got bone-crushing jaws and a digestive system that can match those bone-crunching jaws and actually be able to break down the very hard bone, and that is the final product. And just like we were speaking a little bit earlier about the nutrient cycle and how the death of one animal is sad but important for the greater good of the whole planet, the death of that animal is the first part. The consumption of it is the second, but the consumption goes through many different levels, and hyena play a hugely important role in kind of the end consumption and breaking down all those bits and pieces that the lions and the leopards can't necessarily deal with. And it's important to remember that when thinking about hyena, because they often do get painted in a negative light. Well, I think the opportunity to say hello to those people has gone, so we're gonna keep you on board here. And what I would suggest is that if you do ever come out here, rather than trying to flag us down while we live on a safari, to let us know in advance and make some plans to come and visit us at our camp between the drives. Wouldn't it be great if we found Shadow on the hunt now? It's been quite some time since we got a good leopard hunt on film, and probably the most exciting and recent one was with the leopard we've just seen in Brent, which happened a few days ago, and Sindile got extremely close to a steenbuck and actually had a great opportunity to make that final pounce, but floundered at the last moment and the opportunity went to begging. Copying you 1 out of 5, sadly. So we're going to take the Power Lines Road, and this is actually, I'm told, where she crossed out of Djuma with Sindile this morning, according to the tracks Brent was following, before she continued north and west to a place called One Eye Pan, which I've never been to, but I know is just off the boundary in Sibambili. And this is an area where Shadow does spend quite a lot of time. We found her here hunting on several occasions. And it wasn't too far from here where Jamie, who's on leave now and having a great time, actually found her and Sandile with a kill on foot, and that was the first time she managed to track down a leopard here in the Sabi Sands just after she arrived. And what a way to break the ice it was for her. Earlier on I said that if Shadow's mating was successful, we could expect her to give birth in about 3 months from now. And we just got a question through from Wingnut. Hello, and good to hear your name on the radio waves, because I don't think I've answered a question from you before. And Wingnut would like to know, when would Shadow start showing signs that her mating was actually successful and she is now pregnant? That's a very good question, and the leopards can be difficult to tell if they're pregnant or not, but what we will start probably noticing about 2 months into a pregnancy is a very slight extra tube of flesh towards the back end of her stomach. So it starts about midway down her stomach towards the back, and it's just like an extra little flap that wobbles from side to side when she walks. But she will not become very clearly pregnant, and it's often speculation amongst guides whether she is pregnant or not when we are looking at leopardess. But anywhere from 2 months of age we may start noticing some difference. So not so soon, and even then the difference is going to be quite small. For the predators, they are unable to develop their young to a very developed stage, and the reason for that is it would disallow them or really hamper their hunting abilities if they're carrying around this big baby in their stomach. So it makes more sense for them to give birth to tiny little young that they can still then successfully feed and nurture once they are born. Whereas it's a little bit different for the herbivores. The herbivores can afford to grow their young to a little bit bigger because they don't have to chase down their prey. They obviously do run the risk of being caught by a predator, but rather an adult with the brain than a youngster with no idea of what it's getting itself into. So interesting differences in how predators and prey will give birth to far more developed young in the terms of prey, and far less developed young in the terms of predators, who are often born blind and helpless. Well, we've caught some dwarf mongooses between their shelters, and they're probably going to all scurry off now in towards a log or some burrows within a termite mound. They're such cute little predators, these, and it seems like a predator afternoon. And we've seen the biggest male lion, some in-betweeners, 2 different leopard, and now some of the smallest, the dwarf mongoose. Well, while we enjoy taking a look at these guys foraging about, we've got a question through from Kimmy, also on the topic of leopards and mating and their cubs. And Kimmy's interested to know if there's any chance Shadow could give birth to twins. And yes, it is possible. Most animals out here do have the chance of giving birth to twins, although it's usually very rare that this happens. And what is more likely is that she would give birth to 2, if not 3, different young cubs, but they won't necessarily be twins. It would be wonderful if they did and they all had matching spots, but I don't think it is likely, and I'm not sure of any actual recorded cases of that happening in the wild. Okay, well, before we continue on back towards the area of the Birmingham boys, it's beginning to cool down now, and I think that there's a strong chance that they're going to start heading back towards that kill for some feeding action. We're going to send you to Brent for an update on what's happening at another kill with quarantine.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see, we are still with young Quarantine, who is basically just moving around from cool sand patch to cool sand patch while he digests his diker. I'm sure he's quite a hot day today. Definitely, I think our cold weather is over. I'm jumping for joy. And some of our other team members are not so happy with the heat, but I keep reminding them that the heat hasn't even actually started yet. We're still just warm. Hot is still to come. My favorite time of the year for game viewing, which is October, is quite often in many parts of Africa called Suicide Month. And the reason being for this is because it's so hot and so dry, and quite often quite a little bit windy, that certain people who favor colder climes struggle a little bit at that time of the year. Me, I'd much rather be hot and out in the bush during October, because that's one of the best times of the year to see action amongst the predators. Because it is so dry, your visibility is great. Water points are scarce, so the animals are concentrated, and you do get to see some amazing sightings at that time of the year. We've got an interesting question, and one that we do have to, well, a subject we do have to broach sometimes, because often what we see out here in the bush can seem to the people who have not lived and spent a lot of time in the bush as quite cruel sometimes and quite savage, really. And Valerie from Ontario is wondering which big cat is the most humane hunter. Valerie, if I was going to be completely honest with you, circumstantially it could be any of them, but to be completely honest, it's none of them. They are not so worried about that type of stuff. They are more worried about getting a meal. So whether the animal they're killing suffers or not, it really doesn't affect them either way. Lion and leopard on quite a few prey, most prey species will use that gap between the molars and the premolars to pinch the esophagus closed. And what I can do is I will get a book out and we can show you that little gap just now. But then on smaller prey, both lion and leopard will bite through the sort of spinal not the spinal, the skull cavity, use those long canines to go straight through. I've seen lions bite animals in the middle of their back and just break their spine and then start feeding them on while they're alive. I've seen leopard do that. I've seen cheetah often, especially female with cubs, feeding on an animal that's still alive. So I would say none of them are very humane killers. They're not designed to be humane killers. They're designed to kill, to feed themselves. So unfortunately, a lot of times people start trying to look at the wild through human eyes, and it's very difficult not to. But we must remember that it's not, and it is wild, and it is nature at its purest. And sometimes nature at its purest can be incredibly brutal. But we have to sort of play both sides in our positions. Obviously, it is quite sad to see an animal suffer, but that animal suffering provides food for another animal. And as I said, it is nature at its purest. So let me get that book out for you. And you see Quarantine is still dozing on the nice cool sand. He's chosen a wonderful spot to put this diker. He's got access to the cool sand. He's got water not too far away, although there are lions near that water, so maybe you should think twice before going there. And as we chatted about on the Sunrise Safari, leopards are not water dependent. And unfortunately, that sort of humane lion and that cute lion that's nice to things, or leopard that's nice to things, is a fiction that's perpetrated by Disney. And this isn't Disney. This is real life. So what I'm talking about is this gap here. So basically what happens is the canines will anchor, and this gap here, it doesn't actually cut or whatnot, it actually just pinches the windpipe closed. So for example, let me see if I can balance this. Oh, balancing act. There we go. So if this was a windpipe, and a lion were to grab, or a leopard, you've got the canines that sort of anchor, and then it pinches, so it just closes the windpipe. It doesn't actually cut or rip anything out, it just closes the windpipe. And the main reason for this is to stop that animal making a vocalization. So any form of distress call that might attract a potential another predator that could potentially steal that kill. And lion, cheetah and leopard, and even some of the smaller cats do have that. I think he's been spotted by another squirrel. We can hear a squirrel up to our right here somewhere. Can you see him, Andrew?
No.
Oh, in that jackalberry at the back. But I can't see him from here. That dark green tree at the back there, that's where I think the squirrel is, or where it sounds like he is. And he's taking very little notice of that squirrel. Find himself a nice little hollow there. You can see his ear flicking to keep the flies away. So we're sitting next to quarantine male leopard, and that sounds to be quite a strange name for a leopard. And Bryn is asking on behalf of her 6-year-old daughter Emma Jane, welcome on the safari Emma Jane, how do the leopards get their names? Well, quarantine is an area of Djuma very close to where we live and our final control is. It's an open plain on top of a crest, and when he was just over a year old, about the same age as Ndile, he spent a lot of time there, so he got named Quarantine. Normally the leopards are named by the first guide who finds them, and they are only named once they are over a year old, because leopards have a very high mortality rate, and what that means is that when they're babies there's a bigger chance that they might get caught by a lion or a hyena. So, but once they're over a year old, that mortality rate drops down to sort of 4 or 5%. So once they are older and we know they're probably going to make it, then they get their name. But I'm sure quite a lot of you have wondered how Quarantine got its name, Quarantine. And I wondered that myself for quite a long time, so I eventually asked around. And in the days when people were trying to do cattle farming in this area, it was a quarantine station for cows that were going in and out of this area. Did you know that, Andrew?
Negative.
Ah, see, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's cool.
Doesn't he look quite comfortable in that cool sand? Might be nice to go lie in that cool sand in the heat. He might get up and move again to find his next bit of sand as his body heat has heated up that sand. Well, chatting about Disney a little bit earlier, we've got Cheryl from Orlando, the home of Disney. Nice sunny part of the world down there in Florida. And Cheryl said she's noticed a few videos circulating on the web of a cat that looks like a leopard diving into water for food, and another one of it when fighting with a crocodile. I'm not sure which crocodile one you're referring to, but the one diving underwater is a jaguar, and they are great swimmers and actually often hunt from in the water, and they will catch, I have heard they will catch things underwater. I've seen footage of them catching a tapir in the water as well. So really, really interesting. A lot of cats, the big cats, will prefer to avoid, especially cats from arid areas like ours. Although saying that, lions from the Okavango Delta regularly swim, but they won't go under the water to try and catch something. But they will regularly swim between islands, and I've seen lions swim across the Kwando and the Chobe rivers in Botswana as well. One must remember, a lot of animal behavior is area specific. rather than species specific. I've even heard of a leopard in the Western Okavango that used to catch, a tiny female leopard used to catch lechwe and drown them, hold their heads under the water. And a very good friend of mine actually was lucky enough to witness that. But generally, leopard and lion will avoid. There we go, sand's too hot. Next spot. And flop. So, and when it comes to crocodiles, and then Andrew's found some hardy-dar ibises that are flying over. You could hear them calling. Yeah, back to, and now a very flat Mr. Q. So when it comes to crocodiles, jaguars regularly take caimans, which is a South American crocodilian, which is much, much smaller than our Nile crocodiles that we get out here. But saying that, I have seen incredible photographs of a leopard taking quite a large crocodile on the Luangwa River in Zambia. And I know for a fact they killed a few in caves in Botswana around Chobe. I was sorry, in Savuti in the Chobe National Park. So it is possible, and as I say, most of these predators are opportunists, so they will take opportunities when available. But as a general rule, lions and leopards in this area will generally try to avoid water or swimming. I've watched the Talala Pride, which is now further to the south of us, crossing the Sand River, and I've watched them actually stop at the edge of the river and hiss at the water in case there's a crocodile there. And there was a giraffe carcass. A giraffe slipped and fell on very algae covered rocks in the river, and the lions were trying to feed on it, but they were constantly hissing at every little bubble and eddy that went past them, thinking it was a crocodile. So in this area, they're not very fond of water. I'm just going to move the vehicle, see if we can get a bit of a different view on Mr. Q. I think. There we go. So I'm hoping that when he lies down like he did earlier, he's going to pop his head facing us. Just listening to those squirrels. That's a different squirrel alarming now. Nope. Trying to bite a fly that's obviously annoying him. So he didn't quite stick to my plan, so we're going to try something a bit different. Okay, I think we just didn't have quite enough of a run up. There we go. Just needed a touch of speed. Move back a tiny bit so we can see his pretty face. Really get it, so when, Andrew? When? And if we look up behind him, you can see the tree where the kill is. There it is. He still hasn't put that kill higher. So for those of you who might have joined us a little bit late this evening, and especially for Peggy, who I know has joined us a little bit late, she says, isn't that kill a little bit low in the tree? Couldn't the hyenas grab it? Most definitely, Peggy, and I did mention, I have noticed he hasn't moved it higher up yet, and hopefully he will hear if a hyena comes across, or even a lion, or even another leopard. It isn't quite an easy place to steal. So hopefully he does move it, or he possibly feels comfortable enough that he's close enough that he will be able to rush there and move it before hyena or anything else does anything with it. But just for the rest of you who might be a little bit late, Scott and I have been having a fantastic Saturday, and I think last week Saturday it was the sunrise safari that was full of cats. It seems like the cats seem to work in 7-day cycles here, and someone out there, I remember seeing on Twitter, called it Cat-a-Day. So it looks like we are having another Cat-a-Day today. And so we've got the Birmingham Male lines not very far from actually where we're sitting with quarantine, probably less than 600-700 meters as the crow flies. And we've got quarantine male leopard, and Scott has seen Sindile already today. So definitely another Cat-a-Day for us here at WildEarth. And quarantine has got a duiker kill in the tree. The Birminghams have a buffalo kill next to the road. So happy cats and fat cats, and at the moment all very flat cats. as I mentioned a little bit earlier on the sunset safari, these animals have an incredible capacity for healing. And I've been looking quite carefully, and I can't see any visible signs of that wound he had that we saw him with when he was saw off those 2 male cheetah around the Buffalo's Hook waterhole. I know Sandy from Palm Springs was worried about that wound, but I would say I wouldn't worry too much. It's covered in fur now, and we probably could barely see a thing. So as I was saying, on this wonderful cat day, we've got lots of fat, happy and flat cats. So from one flat cat to a set of flat cats.
Welcome back, everyone, and it appears like all the cats are on the same wavelength at the moment, full-bellied and sleepy. But isn't it interesting how quarantine certainly surprised me, and I think Brent also to a degree earlier on this afternoon when it was still a lot hotter. He got into that tree and started feeding, even though minutes before I had said we can expect sleepy behavior from a lot of the animals around. So glad you got to see that earlier. And what we can look forward to seeing with these male lions ahead of us here is hopefully sooner rather than later they'll get up and head towards the buffalo carcass. There's 3 individuals in this general area, one off to the left here that Brian's about to show you now. The largest of the 5 is closer to the dam, and I'm not sure where the one missing member could be. I'm sure not too far away. But we did actually start off by going back to the kill before coming here, and there were no lion there. And I couldn't help but wonder, are some brave hyena gonna attempt to sneak in and steal a few bites of that buffalo before these lion head back there? Another carnivore that's arrived onto the scene in this general area, and they dotted in a lot of the dead trees, are vultures. So the message has spread through the wilderness, and some of these vultures could have come from possibly hundreds of kilometers away in order to now sit and wait patiently for their turn to feed on the kill. I did actually see a few vultures' feathers around the carcass, so I'm sure 1 or 2 of them have already taken a chance and had a few mouthfuls while the lion have been gone. But they are very well trained at exercising their patience and have been known to wait for up to 36 hours or even more in dead trees like we've just seen them in, as they know that eventually they will get their turn, and with their little beaks they can finish off all the little scraps that some of the larger carnivores cannot get to. I'm almost certain at some point this evening these boys will vocalize in order to continue telling the lions of this area that they are here with a force, and they mean business. The Matimba Coalition, which are currently dominant over this area, are quite far south of here, and the Birmingham Coalition, who we're looking at now, are probably in the process, or are in the process of overthrowing those 2 older boys. And they're going to let all the lions far and wide know that they are here. And wouldn't that be wonderful to share with you? Now, as we sit here just meters from these sleepy lions, they don't appear to pose any threat to us. And a question that's frequently asked, especially amongst the newer viewers, is how are we safe in these very open vehicles with such top predators around us that could very, very easily catch us and pull us out of this vehicle? Well, that's a good talking point, and we've just got a question through from Itch in Pretoria, and he would like to know why we think it is safer to be here with wild lions who are naturally scared of us than around captive lions who often cause more injuries and deaths every year than actually wild lions do. And it's a good question, Itch, but just to go back, for many hundreds of thousands of years, we as humans have been the apex predator on the planet, and therefore lions and most other animals and predators will flee when they see a bipedal, upright human walking on his two back legs, carrying along, and they are scared of us, and they have reason to be, and that is why we are the #1 mammal on the planet. We have taken over more land and more space than any other given animal, and they know that, and thankfully that makes us safe. Now the difference is, and that, let me just go back a few steps there, if you respect them and try and avoid disrespecting them and give them their comfort zones, they will 9 times out of 10 run away from us and not attack us. Itch is interested to know why the captive animals do pose more of a threat to us, and it's quite simple, Itch. As soon as you start feeding an animal, it will lose its fear of you as a human and start seeing you as a very, very useful source with which to be around. And because they don't lose their fear, they will therefore possibly attack us at one point. So as soon as an animal gets tended to and looked after by humans and fed by humans, even if it's a monkey, it could become dangerous in the future and try and get a bit cheeky and cocky and attack you trying to get food. Obviously you'd prefer a monkey than a lion, but the same is applicable for all wild animals. And food is one of the most important things out here, Itch. And if you can provide an animal with food, you become a very important part of its life, and you also give it a false sense of strength over you over time, getting very close to them. They will lose their respect that they are instinctively born with, and something that should be avoided at all costs. So in any wilderness area you are in, when you see a sign that says please don't feed the animals, it's for a reason, and often the brutal but used solution is to exterminate any animals that do become problems. And sadly the tourists who begin to feed those animals in the first place aren't there to see that animal being shot and put out of harm's way. And a question on the same topic of lions attacking humans is from Peggy, and I'm not sure when you heard about these stories, Peggy, of lions attacking vehicles in the Kruger Park. I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm just interested to know how recently it did happen. But she would like to know if those lions in the Kruger National Park could come here to Djuma, and yes, they could. We are open to the Greater Kruger National Park, so there are no fences between us and them, and they could very well end up here. And interestingly enough, there's a pride of lion that was seen on Buffelshoek quite recently. I hope you're all taking a close look at the flies on my forehead. And the lion that were seen on Buffelshoek very recently are quite skittish of the vehicles and aren't used to these open vehicles and the area that we're working in. So they have in all likelihood come from the Greater Kruger National Park. And because the Greater Kruger National Park is open to the public, you'll find that people will not treat the animals as they should be, and therefore that is why these negative scenarios can happen. On top of that, there are some massive areas of the Kruger National Park that are not very easily accessible, and therefore the lions and leopards within those areas don't get much interaction with vehicles, and therefore are still scared of them, and are the way they should be initially if they aren't habituated and aren't very carefully reassured that we aren't a threat to them. They will often run away, and I heard the guides on Buffelshoek saying that the lions, you had to keep quite a big distance, otherwise they would run off. So it still happens, and those lions weren't very far from us. Sure, the flies are out in full force. I'm going to have to retrain my nervous system to avoid reacting to the effect they have when they all simultaneously moonwalk across your forehead. It sends a shiver down your spine. Now, I mentioned that we did pop in at the buffalo carcass on the way here, and we just got a question from Deborah in Ontario asking if we can see the kill from here. We can't, but I can point you in the direction of where it is. It's probably about 200 meters out there, possibly even a little bit further, so no way of seeing it from here. And the reason why we left it is because all the lion don't seem to be anywhere near it for now. We've accounted for 4 of them, one of which we are not sure. And I'm guessing what may happen is the individual who's furthest away from us, closer towards the Djuma Dam, is going to, and he's the biggest of the bunch. For those of you who don't know, it is one larger male, ever so slightly, 3 of the same size, or very similar size, and then 1 slightly smaller. And the biggest of the bunch is furthest away at the moment, and I'm hoping he might rally the troops as he heads back towards the kill. But for now, like I said earlier, we are going to have to practice our patience skills. Well, what we're going to do is maybe actually go and take a closer look at that bigger male and see what he's up to, because these guys don't seem to be very welcoming for now. It will change though. Earlier I was discussing how we may be able to possibly hear these lions roar later, and how they are going to continue asserting their dominance, or at least trying to, over this area. And Zoomy Mike from Michigan has asked us, where will the Matiba males go once they get overthrown? Possibly directly to heaven, Mike, is one option. And the second one would be into kind of buffer zones or no man's land where there are no current coalitions, but they may be on the run many kilometers from here in order to find a little safe zone to see out their last days. But it's not uncommon in these coalition takeovers for fights and battles to lead to death. And it usually is the older males who are on their way out that get killed by the younger up-and-coming coalition. So that could happen. Or they could simply move off. But they would have to fly below the river in all likelihood. And sadly for them, the clock is against them and their days are numbered. They could, depending on strokes of fortune, end up in a different area where they may be able to be dominant over a pride for the next year or so, but the future for them is bleak. For us though, it is good because we have just found a lion on the move. He's just off to our right and he's the big male. And I'm guessing he's going to pop out directly onto this road and we're going to be able to reverse and follow him as he makes his way towards the kill. I'm guessing he's going to scoop up his brothers along the way. Just want to see where he's going to pop out. He may have come up the riverbed towards us here, but I think he's crossed straight through. What is also a likely possibility is that because he's been lying down for quite some time and he is full of buffalo, he may have taken a short toilet break. It's quite common for them to take short toilet breaks, understandably, once they've been feeding on a buffalo for a few hours this morning. Well, I'm hoping after his toilet break he's going to continue towards us and he's not sleeping in a very thick area below us. There we go. Here he comes. Look at this. This, everybody, is a male lion who, for possibly the next few years, may be the king of this area. He's got some more growing to do, which is hard to believe, but he is already a brute. What I'm going to try and do, because we don't have such a great view of him now, I'm going to try and reverse back onto the road, which he in all likelihood will pop out onto, and that way stay ahead of him, keeping you in the prime spot to get some good frontal shots of him walking towards us. Or what I may do instead is just go and position myself with his coalition members, as he's bound to go and greet them. Taking a bit of a gamble here in terms of where we're going to position the vehicle, but I think it's going to pay off. This is as good as it gets. Just want to make sure he isn't going to slink straight past us. I can't see him just yet, but I'm almost certain he will come past his brothers here. They haven't. Brian's just spotted him and he should be popping out shortly. And we've got into a good position here. And you may be incredibly surprised by how tender and caring these animals can be when they do greet one another. Understandable though, these boys have probably been together their whole life, from when they were tiny little cubs till date. They were born into this coalition and very fortunate. Unlike Junior, who's a lone brother, these guys have got some seriously good companions and support. Watch closely here. Hello, one. Hello, other one. Not the most affectionate hello. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to continue on to the buffalo kill. But we do as the animals please, and it's often them that make the rules and decisions out here, which is great. Well, Australina, I am equally as flabbergasted as you at the size of their paws. They have got some massive, massive feet. And it's interesting to see how all of them have grown fairly considerably since I last saw them, which was many months ago now, probably in February or March. And as I did mention, just as he was walking towards us, they probably still have a tiny bit more growing to do, at least certainly with their manes. Now, earlier I mentioned Junior. Some of you may not know him. He's a young male who is part of the Nkahuma Pride. And Danny is interested to know if there are any updates on Junior and or the Nkahuma Pride. The last we heard, they headed north into the Manyeleti Reserve, which was yesterday, which is actually deeper into the Birmingham's area of operation, or where they have been moving for the last few months. So that's where the Nkahumas are, along with Junior, but as far as we know, he is all fine and well for now. But these boys coming into this area doesn't bode for a good future for him. Having said that, though, it is about time that he leaves that pride. It's his natal pride, and the reason why he needs to leave is so that he doesn't mate with his mothers and sisters in the future. So it is nature's usual cycle for young males to move out and establish a dominance in an area far away from where they were born, and I guess this may just speed up that process for him. You might be wondering what's making that noise. They're birds called Aramark babblers, but we can't see them very clearly, but they're somewhere off in that direction. And aren't they aptly named? With a call like that, I think a name like a babbler is absolutely perfect. Well, one of the lions is showing a little bit of progress here in terms of waking up for the evening shift, and he's the individual with quite a strange looking face. His eyes are very close together, and he's also got a scar and skin removed around his left eye, so he's got an old injury there, so quite easy to distinguish from the others. I would like to see all 5 of them lined up together, because I haven't seen them like that since February or March, and only had a fleeting glimpse of them all scattered about this morning. So I do need to try and get used to who's who and what's what and what to look for with these boys. Well, you may notice their bellies are taking in oxygen at quite a high repetition, and Charlie is asking whether or not that's from overfeeding or what could that be. And yes, it's a combination of things, Charlie. They'll be panting now to keep cool. It's still a very warm evening, but we must remember that there is a lot of buffalo meat pressing up against his diaphragm, causing him to take very short breaths. But I do agree with you, Charlie. He hasn't overfed himself, and I certainly have seen Lion in far more uncomfortable states than these boys looking now. So he hasn't overextended his feeding, but there's still a lot of buffalo in there, and that's what's causing the short breaths. Take a look at the individual on the right, Brian, and his stomach doesn't appear nearly as full, and look at how much slower and more gradual his breathing is. Very, very different. And I think that's directly related to the amount of food in the belly. Now, while this is all sleepy and peaceful here, I think we're going to reposition and go up to the kill and see if the one lone male that we don't know where he is isn't there snacking, and the other one individual did get up and head in that general direction. So I think it's worth going for a quick look up there. Very happy to hear that one of my friends, Matty, only 9 years old, is watching this evening's show, and he would like to know if these big lions' footprints are nearly as big as an elephant's. And sadly not, Matty, they aren't quite that big, but they may be a baby elephant or a 5-year-old elephant. But a very big elephant has got far, far larger feet than a lion, probably 4 or 5 times bigger. And thanks so much, Matty, to you and all of your friends for sending through that really cool card you made us. We did get it, and are all very, very thankful for whoever and all of you guys that got involved in doing it for us. Well, isn't that a wonderful sight? That looks like a perfectly full moon to me, and it's got a bit of an orangey tinge, and that'll be because of the amount of dust in the air at the moment. Wonderful. Now we just need the lions to roar with the full moon, and we will have an unforgettable evening here. And there is still time, so don't go anywhere. We're going to hopefully have these lions getting a bit more active soon. And I hope that they do a couple of things, but the main one will be for them to roar for us. And some of you who were tuned in to the Sunrise Safari were lucky enough to experience that. I wasn't. I was with quarantine, which wasn't a bad place to be, but I didn't get to hear the lions roar. Even from where we were, which wasn't too far away. I don't have the best hearing. And another excuse that I will use to my benefit is that there are quite a few noises coming from these vehicles with all the machines that help get the broadcast out to you, as well as the fact that one of my ears has got an earpiece plugged into it. Another question from one of our younger viewers. This one's Gracie. Hello, and good to have you with us again. Gracie would like to know if lions will ever get tired of eating the same food over and over again. And that's a good observation. These boys feed almost exclusively on buffalo. That's just about all they feed on. And as you can see, there's one just up ahead of us here. But Gracie, they don't actually mind what meat they feed on. As long as there's meat in front of a lion, it is happy. And the same goes for leopard. Even if the meat's quite rotten, even then they'll still eat it most of the time. So they're not fussy like we are. And maybe we can learn a few things from the lion and the wild animals out here. So, nothing to see here. And I guess it's just testament to how confident these lions are that they will willingly leave a kill in the knowledge that if they do hear anything snooping about, they could be here in seconds and nothing is going to stand in the way of them. What a beautiful evening it is. Now what I would like to try and do is, because there's nothing here, keep looking for something else. And I would like to try, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but there are some vultures. And behind the vultures is the moon. And therefore what would be nice is to try and get into a position where we can have the full moon with a vulture silhouetted in the foreground. Just don't know exactly how we're going to go about doing this though, because it's quite thick and the moon's quite low. And I don't want to lose focus and miss out on any action from the lion. So maybe we'll just keep that as a plan for a bit later if the lion are still sleeping. Because there were a few vultures off to our left, but it wasn't going to work out the shot we were aiming for, and I was hoping I could get you guys an opportunity to fire off some more screenshots. Got a question through from Valerie as well as Michelle, both asking about the likelihood of the buffalo that these lions killed being a carrier of bovine tuberculosis. And most certainly, almost 99% sure it would have. Almost all of the buffalo in the Greater Kruger National Park do have TB, and this has been spread onto the lion in this area. But it's been around for quite some time now, and according to studies, there's no major concern that we need to be worried about. for the future of the buffalo or the lion in the Greater Kruger National Park. So even though almost all of the buffalo and lion are infected, it is a disease that causes very, very little effect on their populations. Ooh. Okay, we've got another plan B. Just spotted an owl. Oh, the lion have left a few presents for us here in the bush, a few toiletry presents, and it is very pungent. Beautiful, beautiful skyline this evening that I'm sure you're all enjoying. And I'm just going to try and get you this shot that is worth a gamble for, of a Verreaux's eagle owl with the moon silhouetted in front of the moon. Ooh, it's looking promising, but not quite. Well, I'll show you anyway. We're fairly close, but we can't get the moon directly behind the owl. Oh, wonderful. So like I say, this is a Verreaux's eagle owl. It's an absolute monster of an owl, and the largest we have in this area. But sadly the moon is in the wrong spot, and it's quite thick here, so not as maneuverable as we would like it to be. Still a beautiful scene though. As we sit here, we may very well start to hear the evening chorus coming alive. Fiery neck nightjars. There's one calling in the distance already. African Scops owl. Pearl spotted owl. There goes a Cape turtle dove now. And the owl's coming straight towards us. Can you believe it? Sadly, it flew out of the ability for Brian to follow it, but we are going to send you across to Brent shortly, and he would like to share his wonderful view of this evening's moon with you. Enjoy, and we will see you shortly.
Welcome back everyone, and welcome back to the quarantine male leopard sighting. Unfortunately not much has changed here. He's still a very sleepy kitty. I'm going to show you, he's just over my shoulder now, and he's lying right next to us, next to a weeping wattle, or a Peltiforum africanum. You can just see him in the shade, well, no shade now, but in what would be the shade of the tree, enjoying the cool of the evening. I was hoping as it got cooler he might jump up the tree for us again. But he is a very flat kitty at the moment. So we are incredibly privileged with the amount of time we're able to spend with the different characters out here on Safari Live, and we do get to know them quite intimately. When I first arrived, we spent an inordinate amount of time with Quarantine and his litter mate and brother Kunuma, it's really nice to have them back on the property. I think some of the most spectacular leopard sightings I've had since I've been at WildEarth have been with these two boys. For me, Kunuma is my favorite. He's slightly dilly, which I think I can relate to. I think Quarantine is Scott's favorite, if I remember correctly.
He's definitely my favorite.
Oh, he's Andrew's favorite, and I think he's very, very high up on Nikki's favorite list as well. But it's amazing how two leopards from the same litter have two completely different personalities. And Quarantine is a very calm leopard, and you don't see him very much snarling or jumping, and Andrew is giving himself a fist pump at that.
That's my boy.
There we go, it's his boy. Whereas Kunuma can be quite difficult and temperamental and snarly. That's my boy. And it's quite interesting that they've had almost the exact same upbringing, and there you can see, just like in human beings, that these animals definitely do have individual personalities, and it's a really incredible thing. And it's only something you really get to see when you spend as much time as we do with these animals. It seems like there's the odd fly still about. He hasn't read the memo that he's supposed to go to bed after dark. Oh, there's a little stretch there, but no movement further than that. And it's incredible that we are, 4 feet from this leopard. So for those of you out there who thinking we might be going over time, we're not. We have changed the times of the drives due to the onset of the heat. So we are starting half an hour later and ending half an hour later on the sunset safaris, on the evening safaris, and in the morning or the sunrise safari we are starting half an hour earlier and ending half an hour earlier. So still 3 hours, just a different 3 hours. One of the main reasons we've done that, during that really, really hot time of the day, that sort of first hour or that first half an hour we were on drive earlier, there was very little to see, and the animals are going to start moving later at the moment, and also it does give us that opportunity to just extend into the darkness a little bit, and so many fascinating things happen in the darkness. It also gives us the chance to possibly see some of the smaller and more interesting nocturnal mammals we don't see all the time, like bush babies and genets and civets and honey badgers and white-tailed mongoose and owls and all sorts of wonderful things. And I know you guys have just seen a Verreaux's eagle owl with Scott, which is one of my favorite birds in the bush. That call, when I have my first cup of coffee, almost every morning I can hear them calling in front of our camp. Do, 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 do. And Scott and I were sitting out in front of the camp the other evening, and we actually heard, you remember, I think it was 5 different owls in about an hour. We heard a barred owlet, a pearl-spotted owlet, an African scops owlet, a white-faced owlet, and the Verreaux's eagle owl. So only one owl that occurs here was missing, and that was the spotted eagle owl. There is a slim chance that we might see a Cape eagle owl here, but very, very slim. And chatting about night sounds, we can, oh wait, there we go, we can hear I can hear two different nocturnal birds calling at the moment. Khada's heard the one with the nightjar, the fiery-necked nightjar, who's calling off behind Andrew. So we're going to increase the audio to see what we can hear. So, there's a fiery-necked nightjar calling over there. And the one I'm listening for, one of my favorite little birds, is calling over here. It's the beginning of a barred owlet call. Let's see what else we can hear. So we got definitely two nocturnal birds. The proverbial crickets. Andrew fiddling. I can hear a very high-pitched bat as well. Very high-pitched teet, 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 teet. It's one of the little insectivorous free-tail bats. We can hear a game drive diving down a road quite far from us. And even if we have a quick look, oh, that's going to be, it's disappeared. But the weather's changed a little bit, and I'm starting to see a few moths and insects, maybe around the light. Excuse me. So you can see there's a few insects now scuttling around the night, and we haven't been seeing that as of yet. I think the weather is definitely on the change, and as nice as it is to see them now, I think after that first rain, when we get an explosion of insects, while we're going to be holding those spotlights, we're literally going to be pelted in the face by, the worst one for me is this tiny, tiny little black stink bug, and you end up chewing quite a few of them on most safaris. So when you see all the presenters during the summer months and the rainy season months, when we're talking and we suddenly go, and we probably chewed on a little black stink bug. And you'll probably get some funny faces. I'm sure James will be hilarious. Maybe we should put some black stink bugs in his water bottle when he's not looking, just so you guys can enjoy that ridiculous face of his. We're going to have a quick look again at the moon. It is rising quite nicely there, and we can see how red it is. And that's from all the dust in the air at this time of year. Has it disappeared behind the tree, Andrew?
It looks like it.
Oh, there we go. Well spotted. So we're going to keep playing the patience game here with quarantine, and while we do that, we're going to cross back to Scotty. Hopefully, fingers crossed that those Birminghams have decided to move back towards the kill, and you guys will get to see some action. And we'll be back later, and if quarantine does decide to move, we will come straight back.
Welcome back, everyone. And we've just got into position of the kill, but sadly nobody's here, not even a hyena. And we left 3 of the Birmingham males fast asleep in the same place where you were with us just before we sent you back to Brent. So I'm not sure exactly where the other 2 are, but I think all of them are on the same wavelength and not hungry just yet. What I was hoping for is to find a sneaky hyena having a quick nibble here, but that, like I said, doesn't seem to be the case, at least not for now. So what we do is we go back to the lions and continue this game of ping pong between them and the kill. It's such a beautiful, cool evening now after the heat we experienced today. And the cool weather combined with the wonderful sightings we've been having, the full moon rising, really is making for a wonderful way to finish off another action-packed day here on WildEarth Safari Live. Haven't been too many evening sounds just yet. We have been sitting patiently with the 3 members of the Pride, and there hasn't been too much to hear, but I'm told where you were with Brent, it was good audio, various animals communicating with one another. And something that I would suggest, and I did suggest just the other day, is that if you are ever wanting to listen to some wonderful choruses, nighttime is a good time to log on to the Djuma waterhole camera between our safaris, and who knows, you could potentially see some great action unfolding from that waterhole cam, but there's a guarantee of some great noise that you'll be able to hear. The kill that we've just left, we have all speculated that it could be a sick buffalo that we saw a couple of days ago at the Djuma waterhole cam that could hardly actually walk. And Marsha's asking whether these lions would have been able to, or how exactly would have they been able to detect the sick or wounded buffalo in this massive wilderness area. And it's a good question, Marsha. For me, it would have been luck, and they would have had to basically stumble upon it and see that it was weak and wounded. I don't think there would have been any other way for them to detect that, and probably when they came across him, or possibly some other buffaloes, he was the one that was the easiest option for them to go for. Again though, Marsha, it is all speculation and there's no confirmation that it is in fact that buffalo. But I haven't heard of any scenarios where predators will be able to detect a weakening animal, unless of course it's got gaping wounds and then smell would play a part. That individual seemed to just have some kind of a sickness and was very weak, but had no visible wounds or issues. And if in fact it was that wounded buffalo, Paul has just sent through a comment on Twitter saying, isn't that buffalo lucky the lion got a hold of him before the hyena did? And 100% correct, Paul. I personally would much prefer to be killed by a lion than a hyena if I had the choice. Hyenas will very often disembowel their prey and start feeding on them while they are still alive. They are not masters in the coup de grace of suffocating and executing their prey. They literally just eat it to death. And for a big animal like a Cape buffalo, that may take some time. And it is possible for hyena to kill buffalo, but it would be a far more lengthy affair than that of lions executing the same job. So good point, and like I said, you're 100% correct. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I'm just going to ask Texan for a quick update. It sounds like he may have found a leopard, and I'm interested to know where exactly it is and which leopard he thinks it is. So give me a moment, please. Texan for Scots. Tex, confirm you managed to locate there? Okay, copy, thanks. And was he a big male? Copy, thank you very much. Well, great, folks. Just an interesting update. It's not going to be applicable to us. Sorry, Texan just asked me another question. Tex, I'm with 3 of them now, Lalapants, quite far from the kill, still east of Gallagher, Waterhole Road and Mvubu. The other 2, I'm not sure where they are. And Texan managed to find a big male leopard. He thinks it was Mvula, and it's heading straight in this direction, but he lost it in very thick bush. But who knows, maybe tomorrow we'll be able to find him. And wouldn't it be great to see Mvula again if it is in fact him? So those are some good prospects. But we are going to send you back to Brent quickly and let him say his goodbyes, and hopefully by the time you come back these lions will be singing for us. See you later.
Well, welcome back to Quarantine, who is not moved an inch. And the flies seem to have left him alone, so he's not even scratching his nose. But we did have such wonderful audios of some of the nocturnal birds around here. And Heidi has asked me to show a picture of the nightjar that's calling. It's the fiery-necked nightjar, number 1. And that's that wonderful... And let me just try to get the glare off. There we go. And good Lord, deliver us. I personally don't hear it, but very, definitely one of the quintessential African bush calls. One of the funny things is, quite often in Hollywood movies, in jungle scenes set in South America, or even in the temperate forests of Europe and North America, you suddenly hear that some sound guy has found a track of a fiery neck nightjar somewhere, and as the axe murderer is approaching the cabin, which is always a bit strange for me, very out of place. And then we were chatting about the owls, and I said Scott and I heard 5 different owl species calling. I did not mention a few others that do occur here as well, and we should get, possibly not right here, but grass owl, especially towards the Gabbros in Buffels Hook. And barn owl we have heard here before, and that's screech. and then possibly one of my favorite owls in the world, the African wood owl. And I lived in a very small camp that we built on the edge of the Zambezi River in Zambia, and we literally had wood owl arguments on a nightly basis there, and their calls are quite strange. It almost sometimes sounds like they're saying woohoo, and another one go woo, another one go woohoo, woo, woo, and they're literally so loud in that little camp, in that little Timbuktu thicket, that we could not sleep with the African wood owls. I haven't heard them here yet. They generally do prefer slightly more mature woodland, but there is always a possibility we might. So guys, from Andrew and myself on the Jigger, it's been wonderful spending some time with Quarantine, who I haven't spent a time with in a long time. And RC, it was you who was asking about the owls, and we do know you love your birds. Me too. And we're just going to pass on to Quarantine while I say goodnight. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for the questions, and hopefully we can still spend some time with Quarantine in the morning. Good night.
Welcome back, everyone. And as you can see in the background there's another vehicle coming to join us. You can see their spotlights sweeping through the vegetation. Sadly though, it appears like the Birmingham Coalition were most active on the sunrise safari. The sunset safari has been a little bit less productive action-wise, but nonetheless, how lucky are we to be able to view them back on our property again, and good to know that they are doing well and still hunting successfully. A quick question through from Reese before I say goodbye is asking, if these males have taken over from the Tumatimbas, why haven't we seen them mating with the females already? Reese, the business here is not over. The takeover is only just beginning, and it's going to take a lot of toing and froing, and there could be quite a few battles, mainly vocal initially, possibly leading into something more physical in the coming months. But it is just the very, very beginning, Reese. So not to worry, the Birmingham boys will certainly mate when they do finally take full control of this area, but it's not an instantaneous operation. Now, as you can see, there's not much that's changed here. They're all still fast asleep, flat in the grass, and the vehicle that's just joined us has come straight past the kill, so we've got confirmation that the other two aren't feeding there, and I guess that they will be doing a bit of a midnight feast. Anyway, sadly the safari has come to a close, and as much as we hate saying goodbye, it's a necessity. And thank you so much for all the questions and help and support you sent through to us. It would be a very, very different and less exciting experience without you here. And well done to Brian on camera and to Nikki and Kirsty in the final control room. We're going to send you in for one last look at the Sleepy Lions and see you out for some more action tomorrow.